diverse thinking to the podcast from a generational aspect.
Change doesn't have to be overwhelming. Once you've made change, your mind knows how to make change.
At any stage of our lives, we are unstoppable. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Unstoppable from VisionOne High Performance Group. My name is Lori Moen. I'm a principal consultant with VisionOne. And this podcast is for you, a business leader, business owner, someone who may be perhaps feeling a little bit stuck, trying to navigate a critical change, maybe struggling to realize your full potential. That's what this Unstoppable podcast is all about. There are three of us here today with our guest, and each of us bring a different perspective to the conversation generationally. Myself, I represent the tail end of the baby boomer generation. We have Tyler Bonahoom, our marketing and sales associate at VisionOne. Tyler brings the mindset and the lens of the up and coming generation of leaders.
How you doing, Lori?
Good, thanks. And we have Michelle Bonahoom, the founder of VisionOne High Performance Group and author of Unstoppable, a book that shares the 7 simple steps to get unstuck and make the big change and unlock your potential. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Lori.
Today, we're excited to hear from our guest, Patrick Donohue. I had the great fortune of talking to Patrick earlier and was so inspired with his story on really continual personal transformation and continually challenging oneself to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Patrick, welcome. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us. Your entrepreneurial story started at a very young age and it continues today. It was exciting to hear that so much of your business success comes down to mindset, and you're encouraging of other business leaders to adopt similar habits for achieving long-term success. Patrick, share with us your story, of that personal transformation, the significance that you've had, especially you mentioned over the last 5 years where you just really had to step into change and challenge yourself.
Yes. Well, I think about change quite a bit, and life is all about change. And especially for that journey of ownership of a business, I feel like that journey of change is even greater for entrepreneurs. At the bottom line for me, Lori, it really kind of comes down to getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's what I've really embraced over the last few years, as you mentioned.
Well, and so what were some of those mindset changes? What did you find yourself having to do differently?
Great question. Well, a lot of this is really top of mind because I just ran my first marathon 3 days ago, which was the Twin Cities Marathon. For the first 43 years of my life, I really kind of grew up believing I couldn't run, and that's a great example of kind of a shift in a mindset. When you grow up, unable to do really physical activities or feel like you can't. And then, as the years go on, you kind of figure out that it was really your mind blocking you and not your legs or your lungs or anything else. That's been quite an amazing journey for me, like on the personal health and wellness side.
Well, congratulations. Twin Cities was also my first marathon many years ago.
Cool. Nice.
And you know what? You've set a PR for yourself.
Yeah, exactly right.
And, it is a journey where you did it. You did something that not very many people do, but it was sticking with it.
Yeah, and I never even thought about that, Lori, but my goal was to finish. And I think that's like the key to business and life and, things like that, for finish. And ideally finish strong, but you got to finish. So,
yeah. Well, I love that, Patrick, how, you said I set out to do something really big. I mean, most people in the world don't run marathons and they don't write books. And they probably don't do a lot of the other things you've done in life. But if you were to, reflect on writing the book or running the marathon, like what were the mindsets you needed to change to prepare for just finishing?
Well, it's a great question, Michelle. And I think about, the number 5 on your book about leveraging support systems. And I think that's absolutely key. And for me, a big support system has been Entrepreneurs Organization. I've been a member of EO Minnesota. I think a lot about the support systems and how important it is. And that's why I've really leaned into, the notion of being vulnerable. The work of many thought leaders around how important it is to be your authentic self, to have those honest conversations, especially with your peers, because those support systems, as you talk about in your book, you success, don't do it alone. There's nothing I've done in my life alone. There's been a lot of parts of the journey that are by myself. And at the end of the day, I have to do the thing, but it's all the support and the advisors and the mentors and the peers along the way that help made it happen. And so that's what I really think about when it comes to that.
So So when you found that support system, like how did you know who to go to, or how did you leverage that support system as a leader?
And it's a really important question that you have, and I think that's a big unknown for a lot of people, like where and how and who to ask. And, with Hill Capital, and when we're investing in businesses and supporting these companies, I think about that a lot because, we're trying to encourage them to say, hey, what challenges you're running into? What do you need? But a lot of times it's really difficult for people to even articulate what they need. It sounds so simple, but yet it's very hard to do.
And how have you done it? Any steps or any things that you did differently?
Well, I tell you what just went through my head with that question, Lori, is I read the book BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits. I've always been a big fan of Fogg's work out of Stanford in habit building and so forth. And so when he launched the book Tiny Habits, I was, an early reader of that book. And that's actually, now that I think about it, was one of the catalysts to help me start running. The whole idea is not to like get up in the morning and be like, okay, I have to run. It actually started the night before, putting untied shoes next to the bed. So it's this tiny little catalyst to say, okay, just put on your shoes and then go run down the block. And that's it. Just like like just tiny little things. Because then it became a tiny little run to then running 2 blocks and, a little longer. And then the first time I was able to run a few miles without stopping. But it started with that little thing. So it's a great question. I do think a lot about that, the habit design, setting yourself up for success when you can do little tiny things on the front end. And that's why I started off our conversation with this idea too, that lean into being uncomfortable. I can't tell you the number of meetings or things I've had to do in my life where it's like, I don't want to do that. But then I remember, okay, I'm going to go show up to that meeting and so forth, because I know it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to lean into that and make it happen. And then, 99% of the time after it happens, I'm like, oh, thank goodness I did that, or I went to that event. That's where I think it's just that continual improvement and then setting yourself up success with tiny habits.
So I feel like that's such a great thing to land on, Patrick, because we're in a world where we don't like discomfort. We try
Yeah,
to avoid discomfort and remove it
exactly.
from our lives. So yeah, talk to me
Yeah.
about how did you get yourself to a place where you were able to be uncomfortable? And then actually it sounds like you're now in a place where you purpose being uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's only really over the last few years I've really been able to like understand and lean into that. I'm reading a book right now, but it's called The Comfort Crisis. And it is a great read. Every night I can hardly put it down, but it's absolutely spot on. I mean, it's a crisis of how much comfort we have around us and how it's actually not healthy for us in a whole lot of ways. I think about like to make a muscle stronger, it has to go through pain. To make steel, it has to go through the furnace and so forth. And so
Yeah.
it's all about getting out there and doing things for yourself. And that's what I encourage everybody to do, is to go out there and to try and explore things for themselves. And another thing that was a big catalyst for me around that was the book, The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, but kind of like leaning into some of that Stoic philosophy, which is really all about the mindset and psychology. And I wish I was exposed to that at a much younger age. So I guess my advice to, your generation and peers and so forth is to really lean into the whole idea that you can build and explore and lean into things that can help you build. And it's going to be a much more rewarding and fulfilling life when you can do things on your own. And I think that I wish I had exposure to things like the Daily Stoic and understanding the importance of mindset and psychology, because at the end of the day, it sounds so cheesy, and I heard it as a young person, but anything is possible. It is. Anything is truly possible, but it all starts up here. It doesn't start in your legs and your arms and the knowledge you build up in school. It's all about the mindset of helping you unlock your potential through what you're thinking about on a moment to moment basis.
So, Patrick, a question that I have for you is, we talk about how it's really good for you to be uncomfortable. What do you do as a leader to put your team in situations where they're uncomfortable, but obviously not too uncomfortable,
Yeah.
because that's not good, right? But how do
Yeah,
you do that? How do you manage that?
that is a fabulous question. Encourage, influence, impose upon others that they need to go get comfortable being uncomfortable, I think is really, really hard. And so what I've come to realize and appreciate is that I'm just going to do my thing, and hopefully it inspires others to give it a shot as well. Like I've got a very dear friend of mine, and, we're now getting into our late 40s, and, a few friends have been like, hey, like, so-and-so's getting really overweight, and it's getting to a point that's scary because it's one thing when you're younger, but as you get older, it gets that much more stress on your heart. And so I always think a lot about, like, what can I say or do? But all the talking in the world isn't going to change anything. But ironically, that same person, when I posted about the marathon, they called me up and started like, hey, congrats, and started asking me all these stories. And it was so cool because at the end, he said, well, he goes, I think I'm going to just try to run down the block tomorrow. I'm like, the last couple of years thinking about, like, "Boy, how can I can encourage this dear friend to, think differently about their health." Then there's some, like, saying an addiction or whatever, you gotta let almost people, like, bottom out, but they gotta, like, bottom out, and they gotta really want it for themselves. So with our team, we are having them get in meetings with CEOs and entrepreneurs early on, and having them do the work that we are doing as the managing directors of the fund. And so really going out there and then just encourage them to, make it happen and don't worry about making mistakes. Because a lot of the things that we're doing as investors in private companies, it's extremely messy and it's difficult, and there are no answers in the books. That's probably my best insight on that, is really helping our team members getting out there and jumping into meetings and putting themselves into uncomfortable situations, which happens by default because these companies are a mile deep into their tech and what they do. And we as human beings, we can only know so much. So me or any of my teammates, we don't understand all the science and technology of the things they're doing, but we can, show up, listen to them, and ask the questions that are relevant to us, and be able to be successful in terms of gathering the information we need to be able to make decisions on next steps. So
Well, I think it's through your stories, right? Patrick, like you tell your stories and that testimony inspires people. So rather than just telling people they need the change, just keep telling your story.
Yep.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's what I guess that's what we're doing for our parenting as well. We've
Mhm.
never told the kids that they have to be in sports or this, that, or the other thing, but that's actually been a big motivator to get them to stay healthy too, is to be an inspiration for them.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Oh, that's good.
So I'm curious, when we had talked the other day, you talked that you realized you needed to embrace the change of starting a consistent morning routine.
yes. So
Okay.
years ago, I was exposed to like the Miracle Morning, and then through like Tim Ferriss's work and him asking his guests on his shows about their morning routines. I was exposed to that, but I also grew up again with the mindset that I was a night person and not a morning person, that I hated the morning. But there was no basis really in that. There's an entrepreneur I have a deep amount of respect for, Kevin Burkhardt, a former or a past president of EO, Minnesota, and his arm was debilitated, and he set a Guinness World Record for the number of jumps out of an airplane for skydiving with the use of his all of his limbs and so forth. And he was at an event talking about this, and he had shared something that was transformational for him, which was Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club. Now, Sharma has also written a number of other books, like The Monk and the Ferrari and stuff like that. But so I read the 5 a.m. Club because Kevin brought it up, and that one was the one that really hit me. And so I actually happened to read it right in early 2020, and the pandemic hit. And I said, okay, now I've got no excuses. I'm going to set my alarm at 5 a.m. And no matter how tired I am, I'm going to get up and do a little workout, do some meditation, and some other things. I started doing that, and it sucked for a while. But then after 30, 45 days, it became habit, and there's been no looking back. In a lot of ways, I can't believe all the years I probably missed out being much more of a morning person. But starting the day right is really important, to be able to get a couple wins, because you can control all these things in the morning. Like there's a famous TED talk of, or not a TED talk, but a famous graduate talk with the colonel who talks about making your bed the first thing in the morning. But things like that, those little tiny habits, you take a little run, or you do something in the morning, that's a win no one can ever take away from you for throughout the day. So again, it's all foundational for mindset.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember when I was writing Unstoppable, I was so amazed to find that really it takes 4 minutes of contemplative thought every day to start changing our mindsets. And then really when we hear the term 21 days to form a habit, it's just because that's all it takes for us to develop a new mindset. Yet we spend months and months and months living in old beliefs.
Yeah, that's what it grinds on me when I hear people say I can't do that, or
Right.
have some, and it's tough. And so I would encourage anyone and everyone to try something for, like you said, 21 days, and you never know. But if you live your whole life thinking you're just a night person or not a runner or whatever, it's going to be, I think, really too bad that you never gave yourself the opportunity to see what is possible.
Well, I love your plug for the 5 a.m. club because Tyler and his older brother had me read it a couple months ago, and they
Oh,
were
really?
convinced I
Yeah.
needed to get up at 5 a.m. I'm still
They were
working
the
on that
catalyst.
habit, but
Wow, good for you, Tyler.
I'll be honest, I don't get up at 5 a.m., but I do start my morning off right. I started waking up at 7 a.m. 5 a.m., I just get too tired throughout the day. I'm a college student, so my roommates are here. I go to bed a little bit later, but I
Yeah.
do take those nuggets and I start my day off right. And it is, I mean,
Mhm.
it's a game changer.
Absolutely.
Absolutely spot on. And 5 a.m. doesn't matter if it's 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. The key is start your day with the first hour to yourself. Like that is magical by itself. That's what matters. And truly
Mhm.
be yourself.
Mhm.
yeah, I love that point, Patrick, because it's not about this prescriptive, you must get up at 5 or you fail, right? It's start to build the habits.
With older generations, or especially for business owners that are looking to exit, a lot of times what I've seen happen is, people go to exit, and I know a lot of your work at VisionOne is around this, but they don't know what's next, and they haven't taken the time to kind of think through and unpack what's next. Really, that's the psychology and the mindset of being prepared for, what does that thing look like when it's not all about your business, or what happens with your family when you become an empty nester, or whatever the case may be. But I think it's really important that no matter somebody's age and abilities, they lean into that self improvement, and reflecting upon their mindset, and how they can, be open minded and think differently about things. Because unfortunately, that's such a trap that hits our society. Because it's really sad when somebody loses a loved one and they don't know anything other than that, or they lose their business, whether they sold it or it went under, and they don't know anything other than that. And there's no need for that. Life is very rich and abundant, but one has to be, physically and mentally prepared for whatever, comes at them. So easy to say, hard to do. I feel prepared sometimes, then something happens. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
time out, stop. So
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, unless you're intentional, it is so hard. I mean, I've been teaching mindset change for over 20 years and walking through my own life, it's one of the hardest things to do. We tend to want to go to what am I going to do different, or what skill can I learn, or what class can I sit in, or what coach can I go to? But if we don't start with mindset, nothing changes.
yeah, and I just thought about there, Michelle's, everybody's looking to something external, and they're not
Mhm.
Yep.
coming back
Yes.
to what's inside. And
Yep.
I didn't realize that up until a few years ago.
Yeah.
So
Sure. Sure.
Well, what a great nugget. I mean, if our
Thank you.
audience can just take that one nugget away, I think everything will change, right?
yeah, yes, yes. The world is a better place when people work on themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. That's so
Absolutely.
good. Oh my goodness, I have so many takeaways. It's important to be uncomfortable and just even the fact that you said that I want to go read the book, the comfortable crisis. I think that
Yes,
because
the
you're
comfort
Yeah.
crisis.
exactly
Yeah.
where we're at, right? And obviously I'm passionate about mindset change, and so that is so important. I'm passionate about having a support network.
Mhm.
So that was an important takeaway. I think the biggest thing that hit me was when you talked about how you said I'm not a runner, so therefore why would I run? And I remember when I set out to get healthy, and I had the mindset that I have the propensity to be overweight, and I actually found out genetically that I'm not. I don't have a propensity to be overweight, and by changing that mindset, I was able to lose 175 pounds. And so I've been saying recently, I hate to run. So I have to take that same testimony of my 175-pound weight loss and your testimony of running a marathon a few weeks
Mhm.
ago and just get my butt out there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So, Patrick, what's
Wow,
your
that's
next
huge.
marathon?
I don't have any plans. I hate running.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Unstoppable. We hope this episode left you inspired, maybe ready to take that first step to face some challenge, start getting unstuck, and start to make your desired change happen in your life, in your business, in your community. Here at VisionOne, we are passionate about helping business leaders, organizations, and communities in effectively navigating critical change, such as growing your business, getting your business ready to exit, getting yourself ready for your next chapter, transitioning to that next generation of leadership. Imagine having a team that's working beside you every step of the way, providing strategic planning, fractional HR services, and that it's tailored for you. That's what VisionOne High Performance offers. So if you're interested in learning more about how we can help you get unstuck, be unstoppable, and make big changes, let's connect. Maybe it's through an unstoppable peer group and an internal workshop, a retreat. Check our website, visiononeperformance.com, and let's start the conversation.